Deathbringer is an exotic heavy rocket launcher available from a post-Shadowkeep campaign quest with Eris on the Moon. Its intrinsic perk, Dark Deliverance, causes the remote detonated projectiles to spawn void orbs that track combatants. Holding the trigger will fire the weapon, and releasing the trigger will detonate the round. The second intrinsic perk, Dark Descent, causes the void orbs to gain more damage the further it falls. So first up, do not think of this as a rocket launcher. Think of it more as a mortar launcher. You fire off a round and then detonate it over the target. That is what the Dark Deliverance perk allows. Then Dark Descent gets to kick in and reward you for properly placing your mortar shot above the target by dealing more damage based on how long the void round was in the air. How much damage, you ask? Well, after visiting our ogre friend in the tribute hall and sacrificing some napkins to do math, we get roughly a 184% damage increase at max. The void orbs have to stay up in the air for around 2 to 3 seconds to get their max damage value. With 7 orbs spawning, that ends up being about twice the damage of a 4 times Izanagi shot. The void orbs will only last for about 6.5 seconds before auto-detonating. In PvE, Deathbringer is a bit of an oddity. It has this grand spectacle where you can watch a bunch of void orbs slowly track their target and then detonate once they find it. If you've ever watched something like a jellyfish or starfish hunt, I kind of get that vibe from watching these orbs slowly seek out their targets. Every time I fire off a shot, I'm torn between watching the orbs slowly track their targets or just pulling out another weapon to deal some more damage. The damage on Deathbringer is actually pretty insane, assuming you get the orbs to find the target that you want. At max damage, each void orb will be doing roughly the same damage as a single shot from Xenophage. There's also some utility similar to Anarchy where you can fire the weapon and then swap to something else while the orbs detonate on their targets. Combining multiple damage sources from your loadout is definitely the best way to utilize this weapon if you're wanting to focus on maximizing your damage output. If you're in a fight where there are a ton of adds, you can also multitask by shooting off a volley to deal with the other adds, and then swap to another weapon to deal some damage to a beefy mob or boss. Those are the kind of ideal scenarios where Deathbringer will shine. Those are kind of a rare occurrence though. The void orbs have some issues that really prevent them from doing any type of reliable ad control or damage. You are generally wanting the orbs to travel for about 3 seconds to get the most damage value out of them, so you're having to aim away from groups of enemies, sometimes just shooting it into the ceiling. The orbs will usually end up hitting various bits of geometry and just detonate early, netting you no damage. If they do travel their full distance, then they sometimes just don't all track to the target you want them to. I can't tell you how many times I fire them into a group of enemies only to see all 7 orbs chasing down a goblin instead of individual enemies. If you fire the volley into a group of enemies, then the damage just doesn't feel as worthwhile since the base damage of the void round is kind of low. You really need to have that travel for at least a second to really kick that damage up some. For ad control, this basically feels like a way more complicated and awkward version of a cluster bomb rocket launcher. The time it takes the void orbs to do their thing is just too long, and you are better off just using a normal rocket launcher for ad clearing. There's also the problem that a lot of the choose the detonation time weapons have, where you can let go of the trigger too early and then not be able to detonate the volley over your target at all. This isn't that big of a deal on a single shot grenade launcher, but on a rocket with limited ammo, it's definitely frustrating. So for PvE, my verdict is basically that this weapon has some awesome potential for damage output. If you haven't gotten Anarchy, then I think this is actually a decent replacement if you are going for that type of shoot and swap weapon for damage. It definitely lacks the consistency you want for that build though, which is why I kind of hesitate to really recommend using it for serious content. If your damage output is based on the void orbs actually finding the target you want, well, let's just hope you only have one possible target to hit, otherwise you're just rolling the dice on how much damage you can do. Let me paint the PvP picture for you. When normally using a rocket launcher, you point it at something and that thing usually explodes. If that something is around a corner, splash damage will usually take care of it as well. With Deathbringer, you don't point the gun at something you want dead. If you do that, the Seekers might not have enough time to track their target and they'll just do nothing. Instead, aim above the thing you want to kill. Now fire the weapon and then try to do some quick geometry calculations to figure out when you need to properly detonate the round. Too soon and the void orbs might not find their way to the target. Too late and you have probably overshot your target and the void orbs won't find anything to scrub from existence. Basically with Deathbringer, you need to have really good map knowledge to know where people are usually engaging from. Using that knowledge, you can pre-fire a volley of void orbs to maybe get a kill. This is a fairly long process overall and you might die during it. I sure did trying to get footage for this. The power level of Deathbringer in PvP is kind of dependent on how aware your opponents are too. If they're good, they probably aren't going to get hit with the Void Orbs. Good players will generally know what's happening and be able to run from them in time. People without much awareness will definitely not realize this and be easy pickings for the Void. So I only really recommend this weapon in PvP to those that really like the general fantasy that Deathbringer offers. Being behind cover and firing off a mortar shot to kill someone you never even saw is awesome. It feels really good to get that working just right. However, in the faster PvP environments, I can't really recommend this gun. The whole process of getting a shot to actually damage someone can just be a bit too complex sometimes. And that about does it for this review. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, sharing it and a positive rating would be appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.